Welcome to the Eye Test, a fantasy football podcast for those who are tired of hearing boring stats all the time. This is episode 25 and a continuation of our fantasy seasonal awards. So if you want to hear part one, you can go back into your Apple and Spotify history and find part one. But this is part two, and we have 5 more awards to hand out. So let's just jump right into it. And we're going to lead off with our Peyton Manning Award. And for those of you who don't know, Peyton Manning has won the most MVPs in NFL history. So it's fitting that this is the fantasy football MVP. So, Paul, who is your Peyton Manning Award this season?
So I went a little rogue here. I think there is a consensus number one MVP in terms of value and how he performed, but I'm going to go with somebody who I think a lot of us never doubted, but were certainly down on as opposed to the past couple years of his career. He did switch teams this year. He did go from the greatest quarterback in the league right now to a whatever you want to call Tua Tagovailoa. You can do that, middle tier, above average, whatever. But I'm going Tyreek Hill here. I think Tyreek Hill is your league MVP. In a guy that you could have gotten in the second or even third round, he might have been your wide receiver one. He could have even been your wide receiver two if you were to go like Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, and then Tyreek. But Tyreek Hill is putting up absolutely ridiculous, bonkers numbers this entire year. The big question mark with him was switching teams and going from Patrick Mahomes to Tua, and that did kind of tank his value a little bit. But he actually came back and is having, I think, he was on pace to have the greatest statistical year a couple weeks ago. You'd have to correct me if he's still on that pace. But
Justin eclipsed him.
Justin Jefferson. I've heard a great stat on Justin Jefferson yesterday.
Yeah, which is crazy. And Justin Jefferson deserves definitely some points in this regard here. But I just want to talk about Tyreek. And honestly, if Tyreek didn't have 5 points against the Buffalo Bills, I think that Tyreek is just blowing people out of the water. He's the number 2 wide receiver overall, the number 6 overall player. But I think what really stands out to me here is where you could have gotten him. You could have gotten him as a 18th to 24th pick. And to get that kind of value in return is just incredible. I mean, there are teams that have Austin Eckler and then Tyreek Hill. There are teams that have Cooper Kupp and Tyreek Hill. There are teams that have Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill. It's just insane. So I have to shout out Tyreek Hill here. He proved everybody wrong. He's getting older in age, but he still went out and plays every game like it's his last. And he's just incredible. Even on his down games, he somehow manages to get a 60-yard touchdown bomb and a 50-yard touchdown fumble recovery to make up for it. It's just sometimes you need to have luck on your side too, and Tyreek is just phenomenal. So he gets my vote for the Peyton Manning MVP award.
That's what makes him so valuable, Paul, is the fact that if you are down by 30 points headed into Monday night, he can be that guy that can win you the game. And at that point in time, that's the most valuable player on your specific fantasy team. A guy that can win you games on Monday night when you're down by what seems like a lot. Tyreek Hill has that big playability where you're never out of a game if Tyreek Hill is on your team. So yeah, it's a good pick. And he was going from first round value to third round value just because of a trade. I think we learned a valuable lesson this year that you got to draft based off of talent and not matchup or team or quarterback even. Like talent. Like just stick to talent and you'll be more successful than not.
Yeah. Pick guys who are good and you'd be surprised how good your team does.
Yeah. Yep. No, I mean, people try to disregard good players on bad teams or a new quarterback. It's like, dude, he's a good wide receiver. He'll find a way to make magic happen.
Yeah, I mean, Hill is an exception, obviously. Everyone learned that lesson the hard way, but it's definitely not a general rule, I don't think.
Well, you got guys like A.J. Brown who switched teams to Jalen Hurts, who wasn't supposed to be that great.
But he went from, like, Tannehill.
Yeah, but I mean, on Diggs' career changed worlds with Josh Allen, who wasn't considered a great thrower. Davante Adams.
People were afraid of Davante Adams. They're like, oh, he's going from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr, and now he's got Waller and Renfro to deal with. People were still going to draft Davante Adams in the first round, but I was scared to draft Davante Adams. I was going to pick Joe Mixon over Davante Adams if he fell to me.
Same, honestly.
Yeah, I guess you can go either way with that. But My Peyton Manning Award nominee is Austin Eckler. Paul, you dropped his name earlier. That is totally fine. I think we know that he can certainly be worthy of an MVP for fantasy seasons. He was the 4th ranked running back going into the season, and he finished as the number 1 running back. He was in the same value class as Derrick Henry, Najee Harris,
Oof.
Joe Mixon, and DeAndre Swift. They were all within the 5 picks of one another, and Eckler surpassed Dalvin Cook, CMC, and Jonathan Taylor. I think that is MVP worthy there, where you know Austin Eckler is going to get you 20 points a week. And just on a potent offense that does have a lot of wide receiver options, and that doesn't matter because talent gives you points in fantasy. I'll give it up to Austin Eckler, a little bit of an obvious one, but just the fact that he was the 4th running back and he finished as the 1st, I think that's a very good accomplishment.
Do you remember in the first 3 weeks when everybody was like, "Oh, Austin Eckler's a bust. Like Austin Eckler's not going to do shit."
We
And
talked
then
about
He had a
we
tough
talked
start.
yeah.
He had a tough start to the year. You're right.
Everybody was like, "Oh, it's the death of the RB1. It's the death of the RB1." And then sure as shit, Austin Eckler comes in and plays just fucking lights out football.
Yeah. I think he definitely did benefit. I mean, he's still an RB1 regardless. I think he definitely did benefit from Keenan Allen and Mike Williams being hurt like a good portion of the fantasy seasons. So that's why he was able to rack up so many targets. But, John, I'm actually going to piggyback off that running back position. And my Peyton Manning award for this fantasy season, and this is I don't think there's any question in terms of value. This is the Peyton Manning Award for the year. Josh Jacobs, literally was going in the 5th and 6th round as like an RB2, and this guy is in standard leagues, he's the RB1. In PPR leagues, he's the RB2. He has had multiple 30-point games. He had a 49-point game. After weeks 1 and 2, where he put up 8 and 9 points, he's put up very impressive double-digit performances aside for 1 week. And it is just absolutely insane what one coaching change could do for a player, because he was not involved in the passing game at all prior to this season. And that is probably the biggest difference in what elevated him to an RB1. So, again, a pretty obvious one, but in terms of value, it needs to be mentioned because that's where differences and where you could make the biggest difference in fantasy leagues is when you find that RB1 in like the 5th round. So an obvious one, but has to be mentioned. So I'm going to ask you guys a question. Is Josh Jacobs the first overall pick in fantasy drafts next year?
No.
I'm going to go no.
I said 3 or 4 weeks ago that I think he's going to be late 1st, early 2nd. He has, since then, he's still been killing it. So I might move him up a couple spots on my big board, but I do not think he's the 1-1. I actually think it's going to be Jetta or Austin Eckler.
And Jetta's not going to be on the board in our league.
Yeah. No.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with John here.
Austin
I
Eckler
think
will
Josh,
be, though, because he
Yeah.
can't be kept 2 years in a row.
Who will be? Eckler.
Austin Eckler.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, when I was looking at our draft results, I saw that he was drafted 9th overall, and I was like, what the fuck? And then I was like, oh, that's right, he was kept. So I actually had to look up what the actual rankings were. I was like, dude, he was drafted behind everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, but I agree with John here. I think Josh Jacobs, if all things stay the same, if he remains on the Raiders and McDaniels is still the coach next year and all the receiver, like everything stays the same, I think you're pigeonholed if you have that 10th, 11th, 12th pick and he's there. Like you can't let him go. Just because if he does have this season again, you're going to look like a complete idiot.
That's where you get.
I know, and that's where you get screwed. And he definitely does have Joe Mixon possibility. He definitely has Najee Harris possibility where it's gonna be week 5 or week 6. We're gonna be like, look at that idiot who took Josh Jacobs in the 11th and let Devontae Adams go, or let Stephon Diggs go, or let Travis Kelce go. And gun to my head, if you had Stephon Diggs, Travis Kelce, Josh Jacobs on the board, and I had the 10th, 11th, 12th pick, I'm probably picking those guys over Jacobs in the first round. But it wouldn't surprise, like I wouldn't be shocked Josh Jacobs puts up at least somewhat near these numbers that he's putting up.
Yeah, I think maybe definitely not first overall, but he's obviously has already made his way into the first round.
Yeah. He'll be a top 24 pick without a doubt next year.
He'll be working with a new quarterback next year too. I know we were just talking about how that shouldn't matter, but for some reason it still shakes things up in my head when there's a little bit of a change. Like I have to think about it more. I'm like, okay, what's going to happen to the offense if they do get a new quarterback?
I'm not sold on the Raiders moving on from Derek Carr.
Derek Carr's gone.
Yeah,
I think he's gone too.
There's a rumor that Sean Payton's interested in joining the Raiders next year,
which honestly might be the best thing for Derek Carr.
Yes, yeah, totally.
Sean Payton would be.
I was thinking Josh Jacobs. I was thinking it might be the best thing to happen to Josh Jacobs.
Oh, easily. Oh my God, we're talking Alvin Kamara on steroids if Sean Payton gets there.
Yeah, but I don't think Jacobs could have a better season than he had this year.
No,
there will be regression. That's why he's not going to be the 1-1. Or you know what? He might be the 1-1, but I'm not drafting him.
No.
I'm drafting the next guy. I'm drafting.
If anything,
I can't draft Jetta.
If history tells you anything, if it's a running back, at least the consensus first overall pick usually doesn't live up to it. So just something to keep in mind. So that was our Peyton Manning award, and now we are moving on to our next award, and Paul is going to tell us what that award is. Paul, take it away.
Yeah, so the next award we got is the Josh Allen Award. So as we all know, Josh Allen went from a first-round prospect, obviously, but he was still middle-of-the-pack quarterback. Nobody knew, was he going to be a boom? Was he going to be a bust? And then he blew the lights off of people, and now he is a top 3 quarterback in the NFL without question. So this is your most improved. This is a guy who took some huge leaps from last year to this year. And so with that being said, John, who is your most improved? Who is your Josh Allen Award nominee?
So I think this is a perfect name for this award. I was looking at the history of Josh Allen, and in 2019, he was the number 8 quarterback. All right, good top 10 quarterback. People probably started to notice, like, okay, you know what? This is going to be Josh Allen's leap year. I believe when Josh Allen was the number 8, 2019, I don't think Stephon Diggs was on them yet. Then Stephon Diggs got traded to the Bills for the 2020 season. And what do you know? Josh Allen became the number 1 quarterback in fantasy for the 2020 season. So I looked back and I said, who was around that rank last year?
You were right, John. Stephon Diggs joined the Bills in 2020.
So then we think, who was that number 8, number 9 quarterback in 2021? Well, it was Jalen Hurts. And then this offseason, they get A.J. Brown. And Jalen Hurts finished the season as the number 1 quarterback. Little bit of a trend there. Maybe start to think about that when you're looking for, when it's mock draft season for quarterbacks. Because Jalen Hurts was drafted in like the 6th or 7th round. Pretty high for a quarterback, but Justin Herbert was drafted before him. Sometimes Joe Burrow was drafted before Jalen Hurts. And we knew Jalen Hurts was going to have that rushing ability much more than Herbert and Burrow. Jalen Hurts gets my Josh Allen Award, most improved. And I also think that he was a contender for most valuable for this one reason, that because he's not playing this week, most likely, there could be teams that are knocked out of the playoffs because Jalen Hurts is not their quarterback. He is that good of a quarterback where he's going to get you between 20 and honestly 40 points each week. Whether he's running the ball into the end zone or he's passing, he can do anything he wants against any defense. And so not only do I think he's the most improved, but he is a very important piece on your fantasy team because you could seriously get knocked out of the playoffs because Jalen Hurts isn't playing.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts has been like an automatic 30 points this season. It's in
so many different ways. Lamar Jackson was the number 1 quarterback, and it was mainly because of his rushing ability, and he was historical in his rushing ability. I'm pretty sure better numbers than Jalen Hurts. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure in terms of rushing. And
Lamar holds the record.
Jalen Hurts can do it both ways. Props to Jalen Hurts for being a beast, and he's going to continue to be a top 3 quarterback for years on end as long as he stays healthy.
I thought that with Lamar, John, so I really hope it's with Jalen. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to...
Jalen Hurts has receivers.
until he gets hurt, and he's hurt right now. That's the thing that with these running quarterbacks, it takes. Lamar's been hurt the past 2 years, and Jalen Hurts is currently hurt. I know it's only a sprained shoulder and stuff, but that's the risk. Not that this isn't just a fantasy.
Yeah, it could be worse. You
Yeah.
know, like it could happen again, and it probably will, and it could be very much worse than a sprained shoulder. I'm happy that's all. That's all it was.
That's the thing. When you're just talking about fantasy, obviously guys like Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, they'll be drafted higher because they have the rushing ability. They could have the rushing touchdowns, all that type of stuff. But just know that you're carrying extra risk, especially if you're drafting these guys higher in your draft, because people drafted Lamar Jackson in, what was it, round 3, round 4? Like, you could have drafted like Jalen Waddle or something like that who has played all year. So it's just something to think about, especially because Hurts is going to be moving up draft boards next season.
Yeah,
totally.
But Hurts is 1 of 1 this year. He's the number 1 fantasy player. He's been absolutely phenomenal. So hats off to you if you got in the 8th or the 9th or 10th. And we don't talk about it enough. Jalen Hurts is just a world-class guy. He's just a world-class human being. So we're rooting for him. But this season is definitely, I wouldn't expect this next year. Let's just say that.
No. Leagues adjust. They adjust.
Look at Lamar. Lamar came down to earth real quick.
But you guys lost receivers. You lost Hollywood Brown, and he became more injury prone. So
we had Hollywood up until last year after Lamar's MVP season, and Lamar just people adjust when you have a full year of, and this is like getting off topic, but when you have a full year of film on somebody, and these coaches get a full off season, to see it's.
And we'll have a harder schedule next year too. So, like, I do agree. We will.
No, I wasn't laughing at what you said, John. I just laughed because I feel like every single year the Eagles have the easiest schedule in the NFL.
Literally.
Yeah, I know, but the NFC East is the best it's been in 5 years, and we're a first place schedule. So, like, it's going to be hard.
But they're not. You're going up against Daniel Jones and Taylor. Like, Dak is like the closest thing, and Dak is like nothing.
Giants are a fluke. Commanders are a fluke.
I think the Giants and the Commanders will both have new quarterbacks next year.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I think the Commanders might. I don't know about the Giants. But again, getting off topic. So now I'm going to introduce my Josh Allen Award winner for me. And this is a guy that was playing backup to a running back that was pretty irrelevant this season. So it kind of switched this year. And that is Ramondre Stevenson of the Patriots. He was playing behind Damian Harris last year. I know Damian Harris had a few injuries this year, so that may be factored into it, but Ramondre Stevenson has played in over 70% of the snaps in a bunch of games this year, and he is elevated to RB1 status this season. He has been so good for the Patriots, who obviously love to run the ball, and he hasn't scored below double digits since week 2. He did have a 3-point game in week 14, but that was a game that he went out due to injury. So he has been so consistent, pretty much. I wouldn't say came out of nowhere. Everyone knew that the potential was there. It's if he would get the opportunity behind Damian Harris, who got all the goal line carries last year, who had double-digit touchdowns, surprisingly, too. So Ramondre Stevenson really elevated his game this year and probably will be late second-round pick, early third-round pick next year. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, I
totally
100% agree with you. Ramondre Stevenson has come in and just lit the world on fire. If you want to talk about value, if Josh Jacobs didn't have the year that he had this year, Ramondre Stevenson would have been at least my running back category MVP. He's got to be at least a top 5 running back, right? That's not out of the
He's RB8 in PPR.
He's RB8, okay. But still, a guy you could have gotten the 8th, 9th, 10th. Like, people were drafting Damian Harris over him, man. Like,
that's what
in our league, Damian Harris was drafted in the 6th round, and Ramondre was drafted a full 12 picks later in the 7th.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, this is where drafting gets like complicated because there's no like it's easy to like draft Ramondre Stevenson and be like, oh yeah, I knew he was going to take over Damian Harris, but like Damian Harris had the better year last year. It's so
Yeah.
hard to project who's going to have the better year because you can never predict who's going to get hurt and who's going to just be the better back a season.
Yeah.
Running back is so like nuanced.
Yeah, I think Ramondre Stevenson was that late round PR flyer that actually hit. Like
Yeah.
people are like, take a stab at Ramondre in the 9th, 10th, 11th, whatever round. Take a stab at him. He does have PPR upside. Who knows? He could, and he has completely blown the roof off of those expectations.
Yeah.
So that's a fantastic pick, Bob.
Yeah. What's actually, I just can't predict it. And I was just trying to think of a way to explain it. But there's, aside from him obviously being a notable guy, we already knew who he was going into the season, but there's just, it's so hard to predict these things and be like, oh, I knew he was going to be an RB1 this year.
Yeah,
Like,
nobody knows. You have 5 or 6 guys in the late round where you're like, okay, they could turn this. And if one actually happens and you actually picked him, you're like, oh my God, I'm a genius. But
exactly.
it never rarely works out that way.
Paul, who's your Josh Allen award?
So my Josh Allen award for most improved is probably the guy who's going to win the comeback player of the year award this year in the NFL. And that's Geno Smith. This guy came in from a starting quarterback battle with Drew Lock in Seattle. People didn't even think that he was going to be the starting quarterback for the football team. And yet he comes in and he's a top 7 quarterback in fantasy this year. And the Seahawks, DK Metcalf fell off the board. Tyler Lockett fell off the board. Not completely fell off the board, but they dropped in their draft capital. And Geno has come in and he's played some really good football. He has put up, obviously, he's a QB7 this year. So if you have him on your team, unless you have Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, you're starting Geno Smith. And so he has just come in and played really good football. You want to talk about a waiver wire dream? It's Geno Smith. If you did what a lot of us do, where you wait until the 8th, 9th, 10th round to grab a quarterback, and you grabbed a Derek Carr, or you grabbed a Kirk Cousins, or you grabbed a Dak Prescott, whoever, and you got Geno Smith after that, your team is probably looking pretty good if you had a decent draft above that. So Geno Smith comes in. He's got to be 30 years old, right? And he was drafted like 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah. He's older than 30.
Yeah.
So Geno Smith wins my most improved award, and he'll probably come in and he should win the NFL Comeback Player of the Year award for what he's done. So hats off to Geno Smith. Hats off to guys who grabbed him off waivers, or maybe you knew something I didn't and you grabbed Geno in the 16th round. Now, that is the big question for Seattle. We talked about earlier in part 1, I forget who, but it was, do you think that this player is going to, or no, not Daniel Jones, Jared Goff. We were talking about Jared Goff. Do you think that this quarterback is going to be the quarterback of the future for this team? And now we had that question with Geno Smith. Is Geno Smith the QB1 for the Seahawks at least in 2023? What do you guys think?
No, because don't they have a top 5 pick too? They could get a quarterback as well.
They do have the Broncos pick, so they could get a quarterback as well. And the only thing go ahead, Bob.
I'm just not sold. Even if they draft a quarterback, I'm not sold on these guys starting right away. We've seen like players that have benefited from, I know the common thing is now is just to throw your rookie quarterback into the fire and see what he could do. But there's plenty of instances, a la Zach Wilson, Josh Allen benefited from it, but he wasn't good initially. Like a Seattle team that actually is pretty talented and has plenty of playmakers around him. I wouldn't be sold to say it's Bryce Young. I wouldn't be sold that this guy would just be thrown into the fire when you could bring Geno Smith back, still have DK Metcalf, still have Tyler Lockett. And now that division's not even that good anymore based off this year. So it's not, I just don't see them throwing a rookie quarterback there unless like Geno got hurt. I do think he'll be back.
I just think that, again, it's one of those things. I hope did he only sign a 1-year deal with the Seahawks, like for a veteran deal?
Let me look it up real quick. I'm not sure what his deal
because again,
is.
if he's not a free agent in this offseason, like his value is high, and
I think
like they could get draft picks for him. And
why would they? Why would they? People don't just trade like commodities like that.
But dude, like still, like the Seahawks are still technically in rebuild mode, and Geno Smith could be that key to getting draft picks and building their team with a younger roster because
Yeah.
age does play a factor.
So before we dive into it further,
look at the Niners too with Trey Lance. Trey Lance got hurt, and then Jimmy G got hurt too. But there's a reason you have a solid backup.
Yeah, Geno is an undrafted free agent, or not undrafted. Jesus, he's a free agent next year.
Oh,
Geno is a free agent next year, so he will be up for grab.
They're not going to pay him.
I don't foresee them franchise tagging him either. I don't think he deserves $35 million a year, but
he definitely earns some money this year. But yeah, I agree with that. With him being a free agent, yeah, they're probably not going to pay him unless it's on a friendly deal. But I don't know.
I wouldn't mind giving him, like, with his age, be like, hey, man, here's 3 years at a lesser money value, but it's the long-termness of the, not even long-term, it's 3 years, but in NFL standards, yeah, we're giving you 3 years of guaranteed pay. You mind if we pay you $8, $9, $10 million a year? We might bring in a rookie, we might not, but you're still going to get this. Why not?
That's what I'm saying.
At this point in his career, he probably also is at the stage where he's like, you know what? Geno Smith comes off as the guy that is okay if a rookie starts over him and he turns into that mentor role. Like, I don't see him bitching about like how Aaron Rodgers would do if Jordan Love took the starting job. Aaron Rodgers would throw a fit. But I could see Geno Smith being like, fuck it.
I'll just have to show you again why I should start every week.
Yeah, or he'll get behind the rookie or that.
Yeah, so we'll see.
They're still going to need that veteran presence. But yeah, let's move on. What award do we have next?
What's the next award, my good friend John?
We have the RG3 award.
Ooh.
We all remember what happened to RG3. Amazing year on the Redskins. He was on the Redskins then. I can say it.
We can say it.
We can say it. And he had an injury, and he just started to regress. Now, the RG3 award is for the most regress. It doesn't have to be because of an injury. But when we were talking about what to name this award, I mean, who's more regressed than RG3? Come on.
It really is.
Yeah, I'm sure we could think of a couple, but RG3 really comes in. He went from amazing quarterback to in the studio with the Amazon Prime guys or the ESPN, whoever he's with, very quickly. Bob, how about you start us off with who you think is the most regressed of this year?
It would be my pleasure, John. And I know this is going to hit home for Paul. I'm sorry. I know it feels like we always try and shit on the Ravens on this podcast, but really it's nothing personal. I'm actually surprised that the Ravens have a much better record than I thought they did. But I thought they were I thought they were at 500 or something like that based on the season and everything.
We've only scored like 10 points a game too in the last 4 weeks. Insane. But
it's insane. But so the tight end position is shallow enough, and it just got even shallower this year because Mark Andrews has been at least a top 5 biggest disappointment this fantasy season. Last year, he was putting up 15 points. You could book him for 15 points. People were literally comparing this guy to Travis Kelce. Some were actually even saying that this guy was better than Travis Kelce, not only in fantasy, but in real life. And not only did Travis Kelce put that to bed, there's only one Travis Kelce. So Mark Andrews has been a major disappointment this year. I know we've talked about it, but since week 7, his biggest point total has been 12.3 points. He's been injured this year. The Ravens have been injured this year. It's been really bad. And it's a shame because he's still been getting consistent targets, 7, 6, 7, 7, 8. That's really good for a tight end. But the touchdowns aren't there. You could blame Lamar being hurt, but he was even good with Huntley last year. So I don't know if you could solely blame it on that. Some of this has to be attributed to Mark Andrews at some point. But as I said earlier, the tight end position is very shallow, and he is still somehow sitting at tight end 3.
Dude, I was just about to say that. I was looking at it too. I was like, dude, of course, like I agree, he regressed so much, but isn't that crazy how he went from the tight end 1 to the tight end 3, and we're saying that it was really the
Who's
touchdowns.
2?
He went from 9. No, I got 3 here.
No, I'm saying who's 2?
Oh, probably it can't be Goddard. He's been injured.
Who the fuck is 2? It can't be Kittle.
I got
No,
Can't be Waller. Can't be
Oh
Dawson
my
Knox.
god!
who is
Oh,
it?
Hold on, let me guess. Give me a hint.
CJ Uzama.
Give me a hint.
is T.J. Hawkinson
Oh, okay. That's a good.
I mean, I
That's
can see it.
and Evan Ingram is the 4th.
yeah, because that 40-point game, like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's not so much like he's still a tight end, obviously worth drafting given how shallow the position is. But Mark Andrews was what, like a 3rd-round pick this year?
Yep.
2nd round in a lot of leagues.
So you're drafting him in the position where you could have had Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and like some really elite players. And he just laid after the first like few weeks of the season, just started laying complete eggs. And yeah, that's now it feels like that there's only really one big time tight end. TJ Hawkinson has been good. I like him more now that he's on the Vikings and gets the ball a little bit more. But like next year, is it even worth drafting a tight end before the like 7th round?
No, we talked about it, I think, in yesterday's episode where we're seeing a transition in how drafts go. I think it's just going to be heavy wide receiver, and I personally think Travis Kelce will be a top 5 pick. I know you guys disagree with that, but for a guy that can put up 20 points every week and get you positional advantage,
Yeah.
How do you not take him in the top 5? But after Travis Kelce, dude, if you don't get Kelce, you should not be drafting a tight end until the 7th round.
Yeah, I drafted another guy that honorable mention for my award is Dalton Schultz, guy that was really productive last year from the tight end position, and this year just hasn't been the same, has been hurt. So again, don't waste your picks on tight ends. Don't waste your early picks on tight ends. It's just not worth it. You might as well just wait until the later rounds, or honestly, sometimes you could even luck out streaming them. So
Totally. There's way more risk than there is reward. All right, I'll go next. My RG3 award, I'm sticking with the quarterbacks here. Most regressed, we got Kyler Murray. Most regressed, the notorious video game contract got in his head. But a couple other factors too, because I'm not saying Kyler Murray is done being fantasy irrelevant, but he definitely deserves a most regressed nomination here because of the stuff that happened in the offseason, like the video game contract and the media headlines that come along with that. D-Hop not being available. And he was a top 10 quarterback his first 3 years in the NFL, but this year he threw a career low in touchdowns. And then you think to yourself, maybe he ran more this year. Nope. He had a career low in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns this year. And now you possibly have an injury-prone tag on Kyler Murray's name. So his value next year will certainly be lower than it was this year. However, that could benefit you if you get Kyler Murray in the later rounds. I'm not saying he's a non-draft, but see what that chemistry turns into with D-Hop and Kyler Murray in the offseason. Of course, Kyler Murray torn ACL, right?
Yeah.
Non-contact injury too. He might miss a couple games next year, but we'll see. I'm not gonna draft him, but I still think he's relevant in fantasy.
I would draft him late. I wouldn't
past round 10.
Yeah. He's not. I would never target. I'm not gonna choose him over even. He definitely is past and below Jalen Hurts, Burrow.
Would you draft Derek Carr before Kyler Murray next year?
No, absolutely.
No. What about Geno Smith?
No.
Okay.
No, well, okay. So I think another good. So a guy like Trevor Lawrence, an ascending quarterback, like I would take Trevor Lawrence over him.
Okay.
Kyler Murray is obviously the injury plays a big part in this as well, but he's definitely going to fall, and he could honestly be a good value draft pick next year if he falls far enough. Because then the risk with taking a quarterback that late, the risk to reward is very low if you're taking a guy like Kyler Murray in, say, the 10th round.
Yeah, okay.
That's where I drafted like Matt Stafford this year. And at that point, your 10th round pick doesn't really mean a whole lot.
Yeah.
Paul, who do you have?
So that's actually a fantastic segue into mine, John, because
Ooh.
I also stuck with the quarterback. And to me, this is like the biggest bust ever, like the biggest, most regressed person ever in the history of football. And it's Russell Wilson. I mean,
Oh, that's
Dude.
Russell, I could write a book on how much I hate Russell Wilson,
Me
how much I think
That's
he's an
cool.
absolute fraud. But just to go off of, so we all think that Kyler Murray's a bust this year. And so Kyler Murray did not play in week 14, or he played like the first 2 or 3 snaps or whatever. Russell Wilson put up almost a 30-point game in week 14 and is still 25 points below Kyler Murray in his
God.
season totals. Russell Wilson, I don't think we've ever seen a guy get paid this much money, have this much hype, and just, God, the Broncos sold their damn soul to get Russell Wilson.
It's a historic
And
fleece.
yeah,
Historic.
it is. And for him to come in and be the QB 19 on the year and be 25 points below the QB 18, which is Kyler Murray, who Russell Wilson has an extra week of football on Kyler Murray, is just insane.
And Russell Wilson was hurt in the beginning of the season too.
Russell Wilson was hurt?
Yeah.
No, he played every week.
No, he missed a game or
Oh,
two.
he missed the Jets game. Okay, so I apologize.
He would have scored 5 points that game.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even matter.
I apologize, but still, just looking at Russell Wilson's game log, I am seeing way too many single-digit games than you should ever see from a quarterback who's getting paid $180 million guaranteed, $190 million guaranteed, whatever the fuck the contract is absolutely ridiculous. The Seahawks are going to get a top 5 pick from him. Russell Wilson is not throwing to scrubs. He's throwing to guys like Cortland Sutton. He's throwing to guys like Jerry Jeudy. He's got a great, obviously Javonte Williams got hurt. We pray for his speedy recovery, but it is still just like that Broncos offense was supposed to light the world on fire. That AFC West was supposed to be the toughest division in football. And what do you know? The Chiefs, again, win the AFC West. The Chargers, the Broncos, and the Raiders are still in shambles. And Russell Wilson, you are a weird-ass person. I think you are just the cringiest individual alive. And I am loving every minute of your downfall.
Let's ride.
Dude,
That's good.
so
We're about
weird.
to have a Russell Wilson funeral next year. I can already taste it.
That's a really good one, Paul. Before we move on to our next award, quick, is there, because like I said, this trade in its first year looks like a historic fleece by the Seahawks, but obviously one Super Bowl run can change an entire perspective on that. Do you think that I forget how long the contract is. Do you think there is any chance that Russell Wilson turns back to even like 75% of what he was in Seattle?
No. And the Super Bowl run, Denver, I hate to break it to you, and Walmart, whoever bought that team, that sucks for you. But Patrick Mahomes is 20-something years old and not going anywhere anytime fast.
Dude,
you will never win that division.
Dude,
you will never.
It's gonna be the AFC East with Tom Brady. That division is Mahomes for the next 15 years.
Yep.
Herbert maybe will sneak in 1 or 2 if the Chargers could stop being the Chargers, like rename their team or something like
Then
that.
you got to get rid of Brandon Staley, but that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day.
Get Paul started on Brandon Staley.
Yeah, don't even. So we're
Fuck.
moving on now. We're going to the next award, and that is this is an unfair title for the award now because he's proven that he could stay healthy for an entire season now. So it's a little unfair, but we're going to keep it as it is. This is the CMC award, and as we all know, CMC was labeled injury prone, can't stay on the field for the past couple seasons, but he's played in every single game this year, and it's kind of shed that. So
but that injury did sting the most. Like when those 2 years.
Did.
Yeah.
Oh, like.
Yep.
Of course.
Exactly. And so the CMC award is the injury that stung the most this fantasy season. And John, we're going to kick it off with you. What injury just ripped your heart out?
Dude, I'm sure it ripped a lot of people's heart out. He was a top 5 pick. He was most likely the second wide receiver, sometimes the first taken off in the board, and that's Cooper Kupp. He
Ooh,
was
RIP my dynasty season.
he made
yep.
it all the way to week 10, and honestly, he would have been competing with Jetta in terms of wide receiver 1 and Tyreek Hill this year. I really wish Kupp stayed healthy, because even with a Matt Stafford somewhat regression year, I guess we could say, although he was still average to below average, Stafford always found a way to get the ball to Kupp. And to put it in perspective, Kupp was doing so well this year before his injury. To this day, he's still the wide receiver 14.
Good
Wow.
for him.
He's been
That's
injured for almost a month now.
he's he's incredible. I actually forgot about that injury because I'm always thinking of like season-ending injuries early in the season, like ACL tears. But that's definitely one that, like, I know for the person that owned him in our redraft league, that totally torpedoed his team.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. That was his keeper. And you just hate to see it, dude, because he was having such a good year on a
Even with
Rams
the Rams
defense.
being terrible too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it was that just goes to show like talent will perform, and Cooper Kupp found a way to be consistently putting up 20 points a week until his injury. And that was from week 1. He was going off. I think he might have had 1 or 2 rough weeks, but
Where he
I mean,
scored like what, 14 points?
yeah,
Yeah.
the ceiling on Kupp is insane. That was a really rough injury. That stung the most. And of course, it's week 10. So you're looking at your playoff hopes in week 10 and you're like, fuck, I'm going nowhere. If you were a fringe playoff team in week 10, the Cooper Kupp injury put you in that 7, 8, 9 range for the standings. So that's
Yeah. In Dynasty, I was in second or third place when Cooper Kupp went down, and I went all the way down to 7th and missed the playoffs by
Wow.
1 week. So,
Same
I
thing.
think
Same
I
with
was
the
in
redraft.
sixth and went to I was in 6th and went to 8th, and Brio was in 4th and went to 7th.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's crazy. The impact of
And-
one injury, Cooper Kupp, definitely a massive one. Paul,
Yeah.
can you top that?
I don't know if I think John brought up a good point, or Bob,
Yeah.
I forget who brought it up, but we think about the guys who have season-ending injuries in the beginning of the year, because then, like, for the rest of the fantasy season, we're like, oh, the reason I'm not playing well, the reason my team's not doing well is because I lost this guy so early. And I picked a guy who we lost relatively early, I think around week 5 or week 6. But Bob, this is your boy Breece Hall. It was
That's
really tough.
What could have been, dude?
it.
I
Could have
know
that
it was.
killed. What could have been forget fantasy just for 1 second? What could have been the Jets' season? Like,
Yeah, a consistent, like they literally could have sealed the division with Brees Hall, I think.
he was, oh man. But let's not talk about it too much. But yeah, that killed me from a non-fantasy perspective.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree with you. So we lost Breece Hall after week 7. So if you had Breece Hall in your starting lineup on week 7, he still gave you 14 points. I can't remember if he got injured in that Broncos game or if he
He
got.
did.
Okay. So he was lighting the world on fire after week. God, he put up 10 points and then 13 points in the first 2 weeks, and then just put up 15 points plus the rest of the way and 20 points plus in his last 2 full games played. And if you grabbed him in the 3rd or the 4th round, you were looking like an absolute legend. If Breece Hall was your RB2 and you paired him with Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, any of those notable guys, and then maybe got a stud receiver in the 2nd round or the 3rd round, you were looking like you're going to blow the lid off of your league. And then unfortunately we lost Breece Hall, and we're still optimistic because he is so young. He is a rookie, so he's got plenty of time on his hands. But as far as this year, man, it was really sad to watch that guy go down. He's a PPR nightmare. He is great rushing the ball. He was great for this Jets offense. So he does have a bright future ahead of him. But that injury really did kill a lot of hopes and dreams of Breece Hall drafters.
Yeah, I don't think the Cooper Kupp injury, like, that definitely torpedoed people's chances, especially because it was late in the season and Cooper Kupp was a first-round pick. I don't know if the Breece Hall injury totally ruined your fantasy season, but when you get a player like that, with the value that he came with, an RB1 in the 3rd or 4th round, like, that's the difference between a first place team and, let's say, a fifth place team. Like losing a player of that caliber in that round, like it's just it's insane.
So would you guys rather have had an injury of a Breece Hall in like week 7 or week 8 and read the writing on the wall there, or would you rather have Cooper Kupp get you to a 1, 2, or 3 spot in your league and have him go down late and just watch your team slowly?
I would rather have lost Breece Hall because you're losing your first round pick with Cooper Kupp. It's nearly impossible to come back from that.
I would have rather lost Cooper Kupp because I think by week 10, you have a pretty good stash of wide receivers that have evolved throughout the season where I would feel comfortable, obviously not filling in the shoes of Cooper Kupp. But honestly, at the end of the day, I'd rather have a wide receiver get injured than a running back, period. So I think the positional advantage is more at stake if you lose a RB1 value running back versus a wide receiver 1 value wide receiver.
Yeah. Breece Hall, another guy he's been out for a while. I completely forgot about this guy. These guys bringing up these injuries. It's like when these guys get hurt, you just completely forget about them until their names pop up for next fantasy season.
Yep.
And this guy, I know John didn't forget about this guy, and I haven't because I traded for him in Dynasty with him getting hurt. Paul, I'm curious if you forgot about him, but this one, it didn't hurt me personally, but I know it definitely hurt a lot of fantasy owners out there with where he was drafted, and that's Javonte Williams of the Broncos. This guy was a second-round pick. I know John drafted him in the second round, and unfortunately, we didn't really get to see what Javonte Williams even could be this fantasy season, and not just from the injury, but they really didn't use him that much when he was playing. They were using Melvin Gordon more, and I think that's going to change next season because Melvin Gordon's a free agent, and he got waived anyway. I forgot. So they're not sticking with Latavius Murray. It seems like Javonte Williams will slide into that RB1 role, but it's just a sad case because they didn't use him at all, so we didn't see what he could be. And big picture-wise, nothing came from Javonte Williams' fantasy season at all.
Yeah, and it's just one of those risky picks where it's a shot in the dark because he didn't play long enough to even see if he's passing the eye test or not. And he definitely didn't play long enough to just look at the stats and tell. And then, of course, he's on the Broncos, which were a horrible offense. And it makes you think, okay, could he have been a difference maker on the Broncos? Could he have made Russell Wilson better just from at least another outlet that he can give the ball to? You just don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty with the Broncos right now, and even more uncertainty with Javonte Williams. So that injury stung, not just for this year. And quite honestly, it sucked when it happened because that was my second round pick, and I was like, fuck, I could have drafted other people. But it sucks for next year because you have to roll the dice on him again. And it's just like, I want to stay away from him, but what will he be next year? A fourth rounder?
So
I wouldn't in redraft. I wouldn't touch.
I don't think I would in the top 5 rounds.
So here's my argument on why you should not draft Javonte Williams next year, but why you should go full on, complete crazy hammer him in the second round for the following year.
Yes,
and that is Saquon Barkley.
Yep.
Saquon Barkley 2 years ago blew out his Achilles or blew out whatever it was that he blew out. And last year he came back, but he was never fully healthy. He didn't look the same and had a down year last year. But then if you got Saquon Barkley in the second round this year, that's amazing. It's awesome. And Russell Wilson is not getting any younger. Russell Wilson is not going to want to scramble as much as he used to. He's going to be like 35 in 2 years or however old he's going to be. So look for Javonte Williams with that pass catching ability, not next year, but the following year. I would hammer the shit out of Javonte Williams. But I didn't mention him before when I was talking about Russell Wilson just because I think Javonte Williams is an all-time talent. But we were unfortunately, we didn't get to see his full value. Like Bob said, we weren't able to really grasp Javonte Williams and how good he is at football and how good I think he will be when he gets healthy.
That's why I'm happy I traded for him in Dynasty, even if you got to wait another year. But very excited about that possibility now. So we'll see what comes of Javonte Williams next season and going forward. Hopefully, the Broncos, I feel like maybe the Broncos could at least, there could be, you can't get much worse than it is right now. So there's only room to go up, I feel like. So we'll see. But that leaves us to our final award. And this is going to be a very fun award. And it's fitting because it's the last award. And
Yeah.
it is.
It is perfect.
It is the Mr. Irrelevant Award. So if you're into fantasy football, if you're into football, you know what Mr. Irrelevant is. Mr. Irrelevant is the last player drafted in the NFL draft. So to mold it to our fantasy podcast, we decided to make it what player was drafted in the last 3 rounds of the fantasy draft that made a really big impact. So, Paul, let's start off with you.
Yeah, so I'm not super happy with this pick, but I still think that it's relevant that we talk about him. He did miss 3 games this year, and I think it's still impressive that he is just 1 mark shy of being a QB1. So he is currently the QB 13 in the league, and that's Tua Tagovailoa. John actually had the insight to grab him in the 16th round. So Tua Tagovailoa was John's last pick, and even with missing those 3 games and still being the QB 13 is awesome. But Tua has just been, if anything, just a steady force of mostly 20-point games with a ceiling of 40 points. And so Tua usually hangs around the 23 to 29 point range, which is incredible. Lately, he has fallen off, which has hurt his stats. I don't know whether that's defenses figuring him out or there's probably a bunch of factors involved there. But
Going
still,
up
for
defenses.
I'm sorry.
Going up against better defenses.
Yeah, he is going up against better defenses, but still, even then, he put up 18 points against the Bills, which you have to be happy with. And before the bye, though, in week 11, he was putting up 29, 23, 23. He was a QB1 for you, and he probably won you a lot of weeks. So I'd have to put him in here, especially because that 16th round, you want to talk about a freaking dart throw. Most people draft defenses or kickers in that 16th round, and for you to get a QB1 out of that is just awesome. So I nominate Tua Tagovailoa for my Mr. Irrelevant.
I like Tua. I think I don't want to say he has surprised people. He definitely has performed better than people thought he was going to. But I feel like it's just a product of the weapons he has around him, too. Like, they surrounded him with good weapons, like Raheem Mostert. And they even have this backup running back who's pretty good. And then, obviously, there's Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, who could take 10-yard slant route and take it 80 yards. So, Tua's definitely benefited from that yak that Waddle and Tyreek Hill provide. John, you got any words on Tua? You have been his biggest proponent all year.
Yeah, I know. I'm happy I got him in the 16th round, and in a keeper league, I'm really loving the idea of keeping him because then I don't have to worry about a quarterback the whole entire draft, which means that when everyone else is drafting quarterbacks, I can take advantage of the positional players. The problem, don't get me wrong, I'm leaning towards Tua right now the most. The problem with it is if Tua keeps putting up 18 points a week like he's doing now, that's really going to frustrate me because I need my quarterback to guarantee me 22 points, honestly. I'm looking for my quarterback to be my game changer on my team now. That seems to be my strategy over the last 2 years, and it's been working out for me. And I traded Lamar Jackson. Honestly, the trade's kind of looking good for me right now.
Yeah, you traded him at the perfect time.
It was kind of a wash of a trade because I got Amari Cooper, who sucks now. He's barely keeping me alive in my playoff push and my playoffs. DPJ's outperforming him. And I got Dallas Goedert in return, and he got injured right away. So it's like a wash trade. I'm happy that I stuck with Tua because of that keeper value. It's just such a risk. I need an easier schedule on the Dolphins' end. And I do think now that he's going to have a whole extra offseason with Tyreek Hill, probably going to get better and better. So I'm not as scared as I make it seem, but there is a risk of not drafting a quarterback if I really go that route, keeping Tua and not drafting one. I'm really putting my team at risk. But
I think you already kept Jamar Chase, so I would think the only real,
Amari Cooper in the 9th sounds nice too, with an extra offseason with Deshaun Watson. Like that would
yeah,
be my other thought.
Yeah.
yeah, Tua, there's no risk, obviously, when your keeper's in the 16th, but it's like a quarterback where you could just,
I could draft Tua.
yeah,
Draft Tua in
exactly.
the 8th round.
Is there, and again, we've talked about it a lot, but there's not that, Tua's not, there's no major upside there is with Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, even a guy like Trevor Lawrence now, who I'm going to talk about right after this. Trevor Lawrence has some serious upside. Tua doesn't have that like extra gear that could elevate him to top 5 quarterback. I just don't.
Exactly. And
I
that's
just
the
don't.
risk. It's like it's nice where okay, I'm getting a guy like 8 rounds later than what he could draft. That sounds great, but the whole point of a keeper is you're keeping a guy that's going to put up top 5 numbers in his position.
Yeah.
And
Or just really good, yeah, or amazing like value.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And technically good value, but it's like a quarterback. I want my quarterback to be a game changer. And
And
two is like in the middle.
yeah,
And
I think that's what struggles with Tua and you keeping him is that you can only start one quarterback in our keeper league. It's not like it's a wide receiver or a running back where you can flex him. Where if you kept like just for example, just because it's my own personal team, like when I kept James Robinson last year, I kept him as my flex. Like I kept him as essentially a 7th round pick in the 12th. So he still held value where I can draft other guys to be ahead of him. Where Tua, when you keep Tua, the whole basis of that is that he's your QB1 and you don't have to worry about it. Like you said, like you don't have to worry about taking a quarterback. You can just stack your bench and stack all that. But I still like Tua. I mean, those weapons aren't going anywhere. Mike
no,
McDaniel isn't going anywhere. So
I like Tua too, but I like this guy a lot more. And it's Trevor Lawrence. I mentioned him a minute ago. He is my Mr. Irrelevant of the fantasy season. He was drafted in the 15th round, and I'll be honest, it hasn't always looked great for him this year. Against red defenses up until this past week, it was really bad. Like he had below 15 points in all those games. He had 6-point performance against the Eagles. Like he's had some really bad games. But projecting him, he's like I said, drafted in the 15th round. He finished the season as the 6th quarterback overall. So he was a quarterback 1 this year. Like I said, when we were talking about Tua, he has a lot of rushing upside, or not a lot, but he has rushing upside, whereas a lot of quarterbacks don't. And he's starting to really come into form now. Like these past few weeks have been amazing. 28, 33. He had a 16-point, but 24, 21. And that's since week 10. So his arrow is pointing sky high through the roof. And it's maybe even conceivable at this point that he may be able to live up to the hype that he had coming into the draft and everything as like the best quarterback prospect since Peyton Manning and John Elway, Andrew Luck, like that type of thing. And as we talked about on our episode yesterday, he has Calvin Ridley coming back next season with an already stacked wide receiver core. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to have an amazing year next season. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the top 3 quarterback next year. And he is my Mr. Irrelevant, but do not expect him to be Mr. Irrelevant next season.
Yeah, for sure. I really like Trevor Lawrence, and also it's year 2 for Trevor Lawrence. And sometimes having those bad games against the good defenses could be a blessing in disguise for Trevor Lawrence. Something that maybe those are the games that he watches all his film on, and he's like, okay, I know how to beat those red defenses now. And also having Doug Peterson behind him, Doug Peterson's probably helping him out too.
Great point.
It's 2 teams now that Doug Peterson has coached with a young quarterback and has been successful with them. I now do not believe it was what Doug Peterson's fault for Carson Wentz's regression. I think that was all on Carson Wentz. I can see the Jaguars rallying behind Trevor Lawrence for sure. I haven't really seen much leadership skills out of Trevor Lawrence yet, but as he matures, that could very well change.
yeah, the leadership thing was like never his forte, wasn't it? Didn't he in the draft? Didn't he say that football is not like his favorite thing in the world or something? But people like blew him up for that. People are like, football's not your favorite thing. Like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, these are what these guys are great, and you're supposed to be this. And Trevor Lawrence was like, dude, I love football, don't get me wrong, but it's not like I don't live, breathe, and eat it. To that point, maybe they do need to bring in a leader on defense, or maybe a leader.
Geno Smith backup.
God, who knows? But I do agree that Trevor Lawrence is an all-time talent. That guy can fucking throw a goddamn football.
I think
and he can run, he can move. He's great.
I think a lot of those things are just overblown. People like freak out if they're like, what, you don't only like football? You do other things outside of football or the sport that you play? Like, you must not love what you do.
Yeah. Unless you're Kyler Murray and you only live for double XP weekends on Call of Duty.
Yeah. And Trevor Lawrence is passing the eye test. Like, I don't like
100%.
This is a fantasy podcast. And although we do happen to talk about what happens in the NFL from time to time, Jags just look much better, and T-Law looks much better. So, you know, he's just going to keep getting better at this point because he has the coach now. He has the weapons, especially with Ridley coming back. And I only see him getting better at this point. And keep an eye on him to be a top 3 quarterback next year. But he's Mr. Irrelevant this season.
Yep.
Yeah. And John, so to round us out, who is your Mr. Irrelevant?
Let's see if you guys can guess. Ready? Many men, many men.
I love this. I love that this is your guy.
I don't know who it is.
Brian Robinson.
Oh, that was good. That was good.
Brian Robinson, we could say he did it this year. He beat out a previously considered star, air quotes, in Antonio Gibson.
RB1 finished last year.
And he's probably going to run him out of town, Antonio Gibson. I think Brian Robinson will take over that role fully next year. Do we even have to bring up the fact that he got shot right before the offseason? This sounds so weird because, like, yeah, he was shot, but, like, he was clearly just shot in an area in his body that was easy to recover. Like, it's not like he's some superhuman, but, like, still pretty cool that in his second career game after getting shot and only missing a month of football that he was able to score a touchdown. He had a low floor, which is typical for most late round picks. He was drafted in the 16th round and he's a rookie, so you can expect that. He could be a dud player, but he certainly passed the eye test in plenty of games. And now that he has a full offseason to work with the team, work out, recover even, I'm sure he's still recovering from the incident that happened. He is going to take a huge leap. Do we see him getting drafted in the top 10 next year, guys?
What, rounds?
Top 10 rounds?
Rounds. Yeah, rounds.
Okay. Yeah.
Anytime you can grab an RB1 projected in the top 10 rounds.
I can see him being in the dead zone next year in the 5th or 6th, 7th round, but he could be that guy that wins you a league.
I can see that can be like a weird case of like where him and Gibson, if Antonio Gibson stays on the team, where they're like, they go like really close to each other. And it's just a matter of who do you like more? Who do you trust more?
Like Ramondre and Harris.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Congratulations to all these award winners.
Yeah, you guys all won awards from the Eye Test first annual fantasy season award. So congrats to all the winners. Some probably aren't so happy that they won the awards, but that's okay.
Football players, all you guys we named, don't be afraid to share this on your Instagram that you won this award. Like, we would love for you to post about it and make a big deal about it that you won this award from us.
We know you all care about fantasy football, so please share this if you can. But this was really fun, and I can't wait to do more episodes of this later. But that was it. No more awards, unfortunately. You guys are going to have to wait till next year. So this was episode 25 of The Eye Test. As always, we are on Apple and Spotify, The Eye Test, a fantasy football podcast. We're on YouTube, Instagram, and newly on Twitter as well. Oh, and TikTok. So please follow us on all those lovely social media platforms, and we will see you next time. Peace.
Later.